Welcome to our Teen Book Talk with young adult authors Derek Borne, Kevin Cox, and I'm Lynda Allison. You'll find our bios and contact info in the description. Today, we'll share our thoughts about other worlds in young adult fiction, and we'll tell you about what we're working on now. As always, if you have questions, you can post them in the comments or send them to us. Our reading and writing in young adult literature can take us many places, and we'll be talking about the worlds our protagonists are going to in our reading and our writing. So Derek, what young adult books have you read that took you to a fascinating new world, and how did that play into the story?
So I've started reading Sunfire by Dan Kenner, who's also a TikTok author. He's very much kind of the same style of writing as me. Sunfire is where it's a dystopian world where the sun has caused people to have allergic reactions to it. And so the main character, she's in kind of like this bunker type location with a whole community of people that all have this allergy. And then something happens to a family where they are just gone and she doesn't know why. No one says why. So she's trying to figure out why, but also something kind of happens to her, almost like it's kind of like a genetic X-Men kind of feel to that. I love superheroes and abilities and things like that, so it's right up my alley. But yeah, there's like a discovered gene mutation that has made people have to go into this bunker called safety. So I'm not super far into it. I do love a good dystopian. I've enjoyed dystopians in the past, especially. Even there's one called the W.A.R. series, Winter Autumn Reeves by Molly Phipps or M.A. Phipps. That one's actually really interesting too, all about genetics too. Kind of has to deal with, is she the cause of the end of the world?
Wow.
Sort of idea. And that one was a lot of fun too. I actually have to read the last book to really find out the answer to that question, but that was excellent too. So Ultraxenopia, Type X, and yeah, the last book is I'm really excited to dive into that one. A little while ago, I also read the Aronia series by Rachel Pudsey. That's where the character of Abigail Crumble, she kind of wishes upon a star and on her 16th birthday for love. She's never felt love before. She's just kind of like your regular girl. And then the next day, everything goes horribly and humorously wrong. She actually, it's kind of, you ever seen the movie, shoot, the one where she's in Italy, she flips the coin in. Shoot, I can't remember the name of the movie now. But
so I think I know the one you're talking about. I can't come
when
up.
When in Rome.
Yeah.
It kind of has like that where all these different suitors show up just the next day out of nowhere. And it ranges from like human to fae to like just almost like a giant kind of thing, and all of them are professing their love for her and she has no idea why, and then she finds out about the star and this whole thing happens. I know that's just kind of just paraphrasing, but it was actually a really good read through 3 books. I definitely recommend that series as well. It's perfect for 14 and up, and it's kind of like a reimagined version of what a fairy tale can be. And I just really enjoyed it. What about you, Kevin? What young adult worlds have you been able to visit?
Well, unlike you guys, I haven't really read a lot of young adult fantasy books. Actually, like most of my experience with fantasy comes from when I was a kid. Really, when reading the kind of the classic fantasy books, and like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which I guess is actually middle grade instead of young adult. But I don't know if I really have much actual experience with the young adult really, but I mean as far as the fantasy goes, so but like, and I'm sure everybody like knows, well most people know the you know the the Chronicles of Narnia series, but um like like the world of Narnia was a dreamlike world, with have a magical kind of logic system to it, but it made sense, in the context of the story. But even though it's not, realistic is, like a lot of my experiences, um, more science fiction, well, more later on science fiction, and my books have a lot of science fiction kind of, I guess, tropes, in them, or I guess a lot of things you could consider science fiction, but it still has this kind of this kind of fantasy sense to it. I feel like, anyway. But like in Narnia, where you have talking animals and like mythical creatures and everything, and it all kind of comes together, and just, I don't know, it has a certain charm to it that kind of drew me to it as a kid, I guess. And like, and the characters, like, they they learn about, courage and sacrifice and the power of belief, while like the character Edmund, he's drawn more to the witch's power and is tempted, by her promises of wealth and glory. But then, as he experiences more of the world, and he comes in contact with the characters, and he starts um, he starts to see what, the witch for what she is, and starts learning the importance of loyalty, honor, and redemption. So that's that's sort of what I kind of what draws me into those stories, and like the Hobbit too was another that I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with. That I'm not really telling anything people don't really know already, but but he had a little less like it had less magic than worlds like Narnia. It was a little more grounded, and it had like you know a rich and detailed world that seemed more realistic, with its own history and mythology. And of course, it starts with Bilbo, being like a timid hobbit that's more content just to live a quiet life in the Shire, and then as he travels through Middle Earth and faces all these dangers and adventure, he's forced to confront his fears and develops new skills and abilities, and by the end of the story becomes a confident and capable character. So what about you, Lindy? What young adult worlds have you visited lately?
I'm with you on the whole Narnia series. They really captured my imagination. I loved how those worlds affected the lives of the characters. So yeah, good call. In Michael Seidelman's No One Dies in the Garden of Sin, there's a teenager named Cynthia, or Sin for short, and she struggles with cystic fibrosis. And this is like a life-threatening disease that makes it difficult for her to breathe and participate in activities. Now, after being pushed into a pond by an unseen figure, she wakes up in a parallel world. Though welcomed into a secret garden and apparently developing new friendships. As with the real world, things are not as they seem. This world looks similar to her community, but isn't. In this world, no one experiences illness or death. Although Sin would like to go home where she lives with her aunt, being freed from mucus buildup, endless coughing, taking multiple pills, and an early death, and trading them for being able to breathe and run and eat. They're pretty powerful persuasions for staying in the garden.
I would stay.
But this world is not without its dangers. There's this fog around the garden, and Sin is warned not to enter. Well, of course, she's tempted to. And she encounters half-human creatures, a masked woman who may know what happened to her parents, which is something she desperately wants to find out. So how chilling for Sin to have to seek knowledge from someone who is so feared. This main character's determination to discover what's really going on in the garden, that's what intrigued me, because Sin encounters people she's not sure she can trust, and she enters more than one alternate world. This new world in this story speaks to the heart of Sin's medical condition. Sending her to a world where she's free of health challenges is brilliant. As a reader, I delighted in her newfound health, and I completely understood why she didn't want to go back to a world where she suffered. Michael Seidelman himself put it that the big thing, of course, is that no one gets sick or dies. He said he wanted to create a secret world like Wonderland, Oz, or Narnia, where the world is all strange things, but they're revealed by the end. And at the end of the first book, the secret of this garden is discovered. Of course, we're not going to share that with you here. You're going to have to read that to find out. And any of the garden's mysteries that don't get answered in the first book, like yours, Derek, through the series you read, are revealed in the books that come later. And so then, of course, we as readers want to read on. Often young adults reads not only take us to one world, they take us to many.
Can I ask one question? How many books are in that series?
So far, it's a trilogy.
Is it? Okay.
Yes.
I feel like I've seen the first book and I was very tempted to buy it.
Yeah, I would highly recommend it. I mean, by the end of the book, you can't wait to get to the second book. And things change because of what's happened in the previous books. So
Right.
while, you get some carryover, there's this constant entering of things in a different way that the character has to explore. So it's really
Interesting.
fun.
Is that one more like fantasy or sci-fi?
Well, like so many, right? It's really hard to define because, Kevin identified it really well. There's so much overlap. Like I personally, I refer to my series as science fantasy. I've got a lot of sci-fi elements, but, it really goes into the fantasy. And I would say mine even goes into, and this one goes into some magic realism as well.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so these blended genres make for some, fun reads. We kind of label these genres so that readers know that they can choose them, but it's rare that they are completely in one or the other, I find.
Nice. Oh, very good.
Okay, so now in A.M. Deese's Ignited, the big thing about the world here is the politics. So the politics in this republic of sand and sea. This is a desert world where water is a commodity. It falls under the rule of 13 people, and they're all vying for power. And you know what? They're quite fine to topple those who wield more power than them so that they can take their place. So the lives of several characters, they're all on different levels of society. So, the interaction with the main character named J.R.R. is really, really fun. Because she's attempting to free her father. He's the first of the 13. He's got this blood chain that enslaves him, and it keeps him from his duties as a ruler. So the Shar, who's the 10th in power, and Tylek, a criminal sentenced to death, they all play significant roles in helping her to keep control of this first position. And the maneuvers between the levels of all the power play out throughout the book, sometimes helping J.R.R., sometimes complicating the plot. So she's got to rule this corrupt and devious court of wealthy people who they own the water without divulging the reason for her father's absence. So as this first act of government, kind of as a show of power, because she's a young girl, she sentences this Tylek, who's a light bender, to death for stealing Everflame, and then later frees him before his execution. Now, he becomes an ally, but he's kind of at cross purposes and has, a different thing that he'd like to find. He wants to find his brother and find a precious stone. Now, the subplot that actually accentuates all this disparity between the poor who are exploited for entertainment and the wealthy who purchase dragons and train the firebenders. The young J.R.R., she has to learn to discern who she can trust. And she discovers, well, I really like this part. She discovers that these people are often among the unlikeliest. So, as a reader, you're trying to determine, will it be Tylek, the firebender? Bashar, this sketchy member of the council, or Ash, this fire dancer? Just as a reader, you have to read on and find out how all the characters and all the sectors they're in play into the story. So as the power in council shifts, J.R.R. must figure out who's controlling her father before a war is ignited. And as with sin, J.R.R. becomes a part of a new world in which she must find answers to a lot of mysteries before something deadly happens. Okay, so these are the books we're reading. Did you have a question, Derek?
No, I was just gonna say I'm friends with Deese also on social media. She's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was fun doing a book review for her and connecting with her.
Nice.
So these are some of the books we've been reading about. Derek, what worlds have you written about in your books?
So my books really take place in our world. My first series is Superhero Spy, called the Ultimate Agent series. It was a lot of fun writing that because it was basically two main characters of Devin Bertrand and Brett Gallagher, and throughout the whole series, they really act like it's almost like a bromance in books. Best friends, though they sometimes at one point fight over a girl. It's not necessarily young adult, but it's written for young adult readers. Um, it was just a ton of fun because it was my way of doing my own version of like Marvel movies and comics. I've been a big Marvel fan ever since the movie started with Iron Man. Um, but yeah, it's very much in our world, especially because there's pop culture references, there's locations where big battles happen. Um, uh, it's just fantastical with the genetically created superheroes and high-tech gadgets, almost like Bond type gadgets, which is a lot of fun to play with too, but almost to the nth degree because you've got like teleportation, just cool things like that, just to really make the action scenes really pop. Uh, Also, it's a series that spans 10 books. There are 7 novellas to that, and I had a lot of fun of bringing the cryptids and the legends that we hear and see around the world, whether they're true or not, like Bigfoot, the Mothman. I did the Loch Ness Monster, which is interesting because the Loch Ness Monster kind of was a way of subtly bringing in the Dino-Rift series. That might be a little classified tidbit here. But there's also the Michigan Dogman, which it's the fun of being a writer is you get to do research. Like the Michigan Dogman, I didn't even know was a cryptid. And when I found it, I thought, you know what, there's a way that I could genetically put that into my books. And so I did that. I did a genetic version of a Kraken because why not? I also did a genetically created Minotaur, not necessarily from, the mythos, but just a way of how can I bring this in with the genetics that I've already introduced in my book series. So that was fun. But as I said about the Loch Ness, it kind of allowed me to bring Dino-Rift series to life. And it's where Cam and Viv, who are 2 Utah teens, that's fun to say 3 times fast, they have a carefree night and decide, hey, you know what, let's go do a nighttime tour of the local museum after hours. Sure, it's closed, but let's be rebellious teenagers for a night. And then they end up coming across a woman who's breaking into the museum. It's like, well, who also breaks into a museum? This is weird. And then once they're in, they come across SauraCorps, which has always touted themselves as just a run-of-the-mill museum. And they find something that they should not have found. They find a time rift, and they get thrown through the time rift just to get rid of them. So now they're in prehistoric times. They realize, we got to get home. Like, how are we going to do this now? And through a time travel adventure, it takes you back to dinosaur times. And I had a lot of fun doing a different version of dinosaurs that we haven't really seen much in, like Jurassic Park. You always see the blood, the guts, the gore, even though a lot of it is implied off screen. But yeah, my version of dinosaurs actually has brought a lot of people appreciating something different and fresh, which has just made me feel really good for the choice that I made. But yeah, the big question for Cam and Viv, though, is will they make it home alive together? So, but I just released the sequel, SauraCorps Salvation, back in November, and it's been a ton of fun writing that series. It was kind of like I've always been a Jurassic Park fan, even for the books, and to write these books was kind of my homage to Michael Crichton, because he's a fantastic writer too. And I had so much fun with it. It was like the books I wish I had when I was a kid.
Wow, that sounds great. I'll give you a little inside track on one of my books in the next trilogy. where I have the harpies aren't birds, they're pterodactyls. So I play with them
Ooh,
too. So
ooh, that sounds fun. I love it. I love it. Yeah, I'm currently also trying to work on one that's still kind of in the Dino-Rift series, but we'll get to that later. What about you, Kev? What kind of worlds are you writing in your young adult novels?
Well, I just want to say that I love the Michael Crichton books also.
Oh, yeah.
The two Jurassic Park books, you know, were some of my favorite. I think when I was in high school, those were coming out. But anyway,
Mm.
so my series it hinges on this planet that's filled with natural springs that connect to several other worlds across the universe. So it kind of lends to pretty much endless possibilities for future stories, really. But in this series, at least so far, the first book it has a society that is kind of primitive in some ways, and then advanced in others. They they don't really have a lot of technology that they use, but um, they do have this knowledge of crafting crystals that can harness sunlight to use for energy. They live in like a like their planet is a very bright star that and their eyes are equipped to handle the bright sun, but that means they can't really see very well, even in light that would be normal to us. So they utilize crystals to shine light in any kind of dark corners or shadows, you know. And then like later in the book, it, there's a there's another world that that's inhabited by these highly advanced synthetic beings that have built a fully automated city, and their society is centered around information and analysis to advance themselves. Like data is pretty much their currency to trade in exchange for new parts and enhancements to themselves. And then in the second book, a Shadowsphere that came out toward the end of last year. Well, it was about like September of last year. It's more of a world that this more of a medieval style fantasy setting. You know, this more typical for like I said, fantasy. They use swords and bows, and and they also have there's also some a little bit of things that can. This is kind of between the magic and science. That it's kind of magic to them, but there's a little bit of science to it. But so I'm trying to build each world that kind of has a you their technology progression is vastly different from each other. But um, but Lindy, what about you? What have you been writing about in your young adult books?
yeah, well, before we move on to that, I just wanted to share how much I enjoy Bewilderness and that advanced technical world that you create.
Thank you.
I was like right in the world and I'm imagining along with the character and discovering with the character. And it just felt actually very unique to a lot of the things I read. So, you're a master world builder in Bewilderness. I have to get to the next
Thanks.
one, though. So I have to get to the next one. But
I have to ask a question about Bewilderness, though. I'm curious.
yeah.
How much data would I have to trade to get a big toe?
Wait, what?
Are you talking like parts, like enhancements to your actual body?
Well, yeah, they're kind of like synthetic beings or whatever. So
Right.
they like like things like utility like there's one that has like kind of these like robotic spider arms or whatever,
Oh,
that
cool.
and or wings and stuff like that,
That's cool.
but
I love that idea. That's so cool.
Yeah, I think you'd love entering that world, Derek.
Okay.
Sounds like you'd enjoy it. And I'm with you.
Another book to write down.
I'm with you on the interplay with the magic and science. I had fun developing my worlds. Mine are now 2 trilogies. The second one hasn't been released yet, but on these 6 exoplanets that my protagonists visit. I'd say many of the details are really inspired. I'm a beach walker and a mountain hiker, and I draw a lot from natural spaces here on Earth, but they look a lot different on these planets. So there is an element of similarity, but things are so changed, they're not the same. So in the bridges between us, that's the second book in the first trilogy, there's this mainland, and there's these 5 islands. And 4 of the islands are inspired by the things I see on the beach. So rocks inspired Cave Island, and the other treasures inspired Shell Island, Driftwood Island, and Seed Plant Island. So everything on those islands is made out of those things. And my protagonists, they have to search on these islands to find keys. They need to open a door and free entrapped alien children. Now, Pegasus lives on the 5th island, and she's an oracle, and she is a home with a ceiling made of sea glass. And the light shines through, it gives it like this kaleidoscope of color. And as this light shines on the pool that's in the center of her home, this fountain rises. And Gloria's father, who passed away when she was 6, he appears in the fountain. So like in Seidelman's Sin, as Gloria engages in her new world, she experiences what she needs most. And what Gloria needs most is reassurance from a father she still grieves. And what the co-protagonist, Jace, needs most is to rescue the alien children because he was unable to save his baby sister. Then, as with Deese's world of political intrigue, the agencies who govern on Earth in the Summer Triangle are corrupt and wield power over people. In The Lines Between Our Stars, the first book, we learned that the body of the local space agency, the president, he's actually an alien in disguise. And a little hint in the second trilogy, readers are going to begin to see that this alien takeover is more widespread than they first knew. Now, these alien presidents, they implement restrictions on innovation and invention, things that might allow the people of Earth to discover what's happening on these exoplanets near these bright stars of both the summer and winter triangles. And they enforce these like tough curfews, and they allocate all this extra work, or they incarcerate those who break the restrictions. So the political structures affect all aspects of life: work, play, art, and like in real life, governing bodies who oppress, keep people from experiencing their best lives. So now, Derek, what are you currently writing about? We've heard what you've gotten out. What's coming along?
I currently have 3 works in progress that are screaming at me. So it's been tough trying to figure out, okay, which one's going to win out over the other. But currently I'm writing a couple of spin-offs from the Dino-Rift series. One is affected by a big turning point in the Dino-Rift series, which is fun because with that turning point, there's so many other things I could do, and it's just the ideas keep piling up in my brain. I just got to write them all out on a notepad. But I have an idea where a young girl discovers a lost prehistoric creature and decides to keep it safe, and kind of stumbles across a Texas ranch that's owned by an elderly widower. And basically, he's also got prehistoric creatures there that have been kind of popping into our time over the years through the time rifts. But then when it comes to SauraCorps, the company of SauraCorps, is they feel that the widower doesn't necessarily own the dinosaurs. So will they take them from him? It's something I've really felt lately. I don't know what it is, maybe just because I've experienced, and ones in my family have experienced, grief, but I really want to kind of delve into grief and how we can come together, even with found family kind of idea. Found family is a big trope that people love, and I think it's always heartwarming. Another idea I have is also, again, the spinoff from Dino-Rift, but it's where a 7th century English woman gets time teleported to an android-run dystopian future. I have not written a dystopian. I've always wanted to, so this is my chance. And basically, she has to help the last, kind of like the usual last faction of humanity that wants to take the Earth back from the androids. But she also befriends a saber-toothed tiger. And so I love doing the prehistoric creatures because I actually did a little interview a while ago where I was told to find a bunch of young adult books with dinosaurs. So I searched and I was like, we need more. We need more. I know there's Dynotopia. I loved Dynotopia when I was a kid, and that book series is like, I think close to maybe 25 books long. It was a great series, but I felt like we need more in my world with young adults. So I'm trying to get those ideas out there. And with the 7th century English woman one, it's called Orva. She's not young adult, but again, will be written for young adult readers. Basically, anyone can read it and enjoy it. But I'm very excited to see where that one takes me, because there's also going to be elements of Phantom of the Opera, which I'm a big fan of the Broadway musical. There won't be any music in this book, but just elements of Phantom of the Opera. So I'm very excited because I've never written robots either. And to kind of, I actually said to my wife the one day, it's weird getting into the mindset of a robot.
Yeah.
Like what would be, what the reasons why, where did they come from? What do they feel is their difference between them and humanity? So I'm having a lot of fun figuring all that out, and I'm very much a pantser. I mean, plot, what is that? But I find it helps me just kind of figure things out on the way. If I can surprise myself, hopefully I can surprise others. So, but yeah, those are the two projects I've got going on. Everything else is classified. What about you, Kev? What are you writing about in New Worlds?
Well, the one I'm working on now is the next book in the series. It's pretty much finished. Just getting some editing done on it. So I don't. I'm not really ready to say a whole lot about it yet. But
Editing's fun though, isn't it?
yeah, it can be at times, but it can also be a pain too. But yeah. So there's there's 2 new worlds that I'm kind of introducing in this one, and for races that hadn't been mentioned in the series previously, but one in particular is well, part of the story takes place outside of the physical universe, and there's a race of creatures there that feed on energy instead of they don't eat like organic food or anything like that. There's kind of a survival of the fittest kind of situation where where different creatures are fighting over this energy to have enough to survive, basically. But that's all I really can mention. I mean, I haven't really started the marketing on this, I guess, on this book yet, but because I'm not really sure when it's coming out, but
That sounds cool.
Sometime this year. But so what about you, Lindy? Any new worlds that you've been writing about lately?
Yeah, a few in this next trilogy. But before I speak of them, Derek, I'm really excited to hear you talk about wanting to write about grief. That's one of the things that plays out in my story. Both my characters are grieving, and I think it's really important, especially in young adult books. As a teacher, I had students encountered this often, and I think they need to read about it and see teens who are working through the really tough issues and anger and other things that come out over grief. So I'm excited.
Yeah. I'm hoping it comes through well, because it's basically for the widower is obviously being a widower, he feels like he needs to fill a void. So looking after the lost dinosaurs to him is kind of like that's what he needs. at this moment. So when SauraCorps comes through and they're kind of like, well, you don't really own these, that's where the clash heads. So I'm really interested to kind of get into that.
Okay, and Kevin, a little bit secretive there, so we got a little tiny tidbit, but knowing your world, I just can't wait to get into it. So the Summer Triangle trilogy, each of the planets happens in a summery world or in the season of summer. And I play off of the constellation myths that these stars are in. And so I'm having fun this time with the winter trilogy. There are some really large bugs in them. I remembered as a teen watching that movie about Jason and the Argonauts. And I remember just being completely bored in the movie because it was so slow moving. And so I researched it, and then I was completely bored all over again. So I'm doing like an alternate sailing on board the Argonaut because the bright stars in the constellation I'm writing about is Gemini, so the twins that are on the front of that boat. And then the last book is actually a parallel of Athens, and we've got varied versions of all the great gods. So, I think having fun with your writing shows up in your writing. And I can tell you how much fun I'm having with these Greek gods and their antics and what they put my protagonist through. So where in the first trilogy, my teens are trying to rescue alien children. In this one, Jace's mom is dying of cancer, and they're trying to collect seeds on each of these planets to make the medicine that she needs to be healed. And so they have many trials in order to get to them. So I'm hoping that that will hold some interest for young adults.
How big of bugs are we talking?
Bugs? Well, not like the size of a building, but definitely the size of you.
Okay. I only ask because there are giant bugs, like especially giant centipedes in the Dino-Rift series.
Oh, okay.
That people are very like, ugh.
Well, I actually have some first person, research done on that because on one of my hikes here in Panama, I got stung, I think it was 9 times by these giant wasps. So, I have like some really significant research that, firsthand that I could build.
Yeah.
Running for the river and jumping in to cool off. Oh, wow.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't have firsthand experience with prehistoric 10-foot long centipedes.
Thankfully. But, like in yours, Kevin, right? We're getting, more and more advanced technology that's affecting our bodies and other things. So we can have a lot of fun playing with these things.
Yeah.
So, Derek, I want to say thank you for coming today. Really appreciated learning more about your books. I couldn't wait to tell my son about them. He's a huge Michael Crichton fan. Is it Crichton?
Yeah.
Or Crichton?
Crichton.
So, anyways, and he loves the Jurassic Park books. The movies in my household, my kids still say the lines from the movies at various dinners and things. We just, they just can't get away from them because they love them so much. So I refer
to a degree, the movies don't do the books justice.
Okay.
That's true.
Yeah, he's probably with those too, but he'll definitely have an interest in yours for sure.
Very cool.
Right. So thank you for joining me on Team Book Talk to talk about your other worlds, Derek.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
And Kevin, thanks for sharing your reading and writing on other worlds. We appreciate that.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for having me.
And that's another Team Book Talk. And if there's a topic that you'd like to discuss, please share it in the comments. Thank you for joining us. And most importantly, keep reading and writing.